That's a helpful insight.
Just have a little bit more space.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the August 11th meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. At 4 o'clock today, the board conducted a work session to discuss proposals from the 4 finalists of the Jefferson County Public Schools School of Innovation Design Competition. The board will select a School of Innovation Design later in the meeting. At 5:30, board members had dinner with our new principals and principals with new assignments. On behalf of the board, welcome and congratulations, and thank you. Just a reminder, the first day of school, now I know everybody knows this, but just as a reminder, the first day of school, let's all say it in unison, the first day of school is Wednesday. All right, August the 13th. We're looking forward to a great start and to a successful school year. At this time, please join us for our traditional moment of silence, and then we will have the pledge, and Vice Chair Jones will read our vision statement. But first, could we please have a moment of silence? Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. Vice Chair Jones.
Our vision is all JCPS students graduate prepared to reach their full potential and contribute to our society throughout life.
Thank you very much. At this time, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 28th meeting? Mr. Hadaway, second. Mr. Brady, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now have our recognitions and resolutions. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. Dr. Hargens, Board Chair Diane Porter, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. Tonight, we have the honor of recognizing our district's new principals and current principals who have accepted new school assignments. Principal leadership is essential to the educational success of Jefferson County Public School District students. The district assists the school-based decision-making council, who statutorily holds the authority to select the principal, which report to their area superintendent. Board Chair Diane Porter, please come forward to congratulate principals in District 1, Jamie Wyman, Carter Traditional Elementary School, Stephanie White, King Elementary School, Nicole Marshall, Roosevelt Perry Elementary School. Board Vice Chairman David Jones Jr., please congratulate the principals in District 2, Mark Boyer, Klondike Lane Elementary School, Kimberly Harbolt, Seneca High School. Board Member Debbie Westland, please come forward to congratulate the principals in District 3. Tracy Barber, Dunn Elementary School, Austin Allen, Lowe Elementary School, Justin Matson, Middletown Elementary School, Bill Perkins, Wilder Elementary School, David Armour, Camerer Middle School, Delina Pritchett Alexander, Westport Tap. Board Member Chuck Hadaway, please congratulate the principals in District 4. Kevin Garner, Shacklet Elementary School. Linda Hudson, Farnsley Middle School. Faith Stroud, Frost 6th Grade Academy. Renee Bledsoe, Stewart Middle School. Kimberly Sawyer, Pleasure Ridge Park High School. Board Member Linda Duncan, please congratulate the principals in District 5. Ryan Rodowski, Olmsted Academy North. Delina Pritchett Alexander, South Park Tap. Board Member Carol Ann Haddad. Please congratulate the principals in District 6, Samuel Cowan, Gilmore Lane Elementary School, Dwan Wright, Hartstern Elementary School, Joseph Wood, Indian Trail Elementary, Karen Stearman, Okolona Elementary School. Board Member Chris Brady, please come forward to congratulate the principals in District 7, Linda Dunhauer, Tully Elementary School, Marcella Franklin Williams, Carithers Middle School, and Nathan Myers, Fern Creek Traditional High School. Dr. Hargens and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion at this time to receive the recognitions? Mr. Brady, second. Ms. Haddad, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. At this point in the agenda, I always allow the students to leave to work on their homework. So tonight we're going to allow the principals to leave to work on getting ready for the big day. Have a great year. We're very proud of you and for all that you'll do for our students. Thank you. There were no speakers on the consent calendar, so at this time we're going to turn it over to Dr. Hargens for her report, and then we will ask for anything that needs to be pulled down from the consent calendar. Dr. Hargens.
Thank you, Chair Porter, members of the board. It is my pleasure to call your attention to a few items of special interest. First, congratulations to Julia Boucher, JCPS Director of School and Community Nutrition Services. Julia was installed as president. Okay, that's better. Let me try that again. It's my pleasure to call to your attention a couple of items of special interest. Congratulations to Julia Boucher, JCPS Director of School and Community Nutrition Services. Julia was installed as president of the School Nutrition Association at last month's annual national conference in Boston and is featured, as you can see, in the August 2014 issue of the School Nutrition Association publication. The School Nutrition Association is the national organization of school nutrition professionals committed to advancing the quality of school meal programs through education and advocacy. Best wishes to Julia in this important role and this opportunity. The 2014 Challenger Center Annual Conference is taking place as we speak in Louisville, Kentucky from August 10th through the 14th. This morning, I met Dr. Lance Bush, President and CEO of the Challenger Learning Center, June Scobie Rogers, founder of the Challenger Centers, and Barbara Morgan, NASA's first educator astronaut. So it was an honor to meet them right here in Louisville, Kentucky. And you know, you can't see that very well, but that's me going into space. So, but I came back down to Earth just for this meeting. So, but it was exciting. Tomorrow, Tuesday, August 12th at 10 a.m., we will host the 2014-15 JCPS Connect Kickoff, a live virtual district-wide event. The 2014-15 JCPS Connect Kickoff will provide employees the opportunity to receive information directly from me and from the leadership team, learn about a new resource for all employees, and engage cabinet members and me in a live question and answer session. So we know as we begin the new school year, and did everybody remember it's Wednesday, August 13th? Thank you, Ms. Porter. It's important for all JCPS employees to have accurate information about the progress they are a part of each day. We know they receive questions from our community, and we want them to have the answers at their fingertips. So as a part of JCPS Connect, our initiative is to strengthen internal communications. We are launching this new infographic webpage created by graphic designer Sarah Haley. It details the progress of the district in several key areas. So what we need employees in the community to look for is JCPS Connect, because that will be information that every employee needs to have. One of the things we want every employee to know is that student achievement is improving. And what you can do is see, for instance, the college and career readiness gains. If you scroll down a little bit slower, I'm going to let Andy get me back. The second thing is that JCPS classrooms are supported. It's been a real initiative to make sure that dollars are going directly into the classrooms. So if you look at the information on this part of the graphic, what you can see is that JCPS continues to increase dollars moved directly to support to the classroom. Then the third part of the graphic is about JCPS improving operations. It talks about school choice and how many parents get their first choice. This is last year's average ride time, 29 minutes. And these are the number of JCPS employees earning $100 or $100,000. And this portion of that population is actually right in school serving students. Then you know that we did a lot of work and applaud the area superintendents and principals to make sure that our parents were given a reasonable supply list. So supplies will be provided by the school and the district. We're proud that 90.2% of our parents are satisfied with the school that they're in. That's from the comprehensive survey. The fourth part of the infographic is the Board of Education's work in leading the district forward. Their continuous support of making sure that we create budgets that put extra support into classrooms, that we have competitive wages for all of our employees, that we're on a journey of continuous improvement, that we call for reviews like the state audit to look for ways that we can be even more efficient and that we can be better. And then also about school choice, and then stewardship of the important decisions they have to make during the school year and during the entire year. So again, what you need to do is look for the logo, which is JCPS Connect, and we will always provide you up-to-date information about what's going on in the system. And we're looking forward to the live broadcast tomorrow. Item R on the consent agenda is the approval to name the upper gymnasium at Frederick Law Olmsted Academy North the Derwin Dirk Davidson Gymnasium. I would like to acknowledge and welcome and congratulate Mr. Dirk Davidson. Attending with Mr. Davidson tonight are his wife, Pat, his sons, Drake and Dylan, the current principal, Ryan Radowski, the past principal, Bill Perkins, and Assistant Superintendent Amy Dennis. If you would all stand and be recognized. Mr. Davidson is a graduate of Seneca High School. He began working as a Family Resource and Youth Service Center Frisky coordinator at Olmsted Academy North, formerly Southern Middle School, in 1994. During his 20 years at Olmsted Academy North, Mr. Davidson mentored thousands of students. Mr. Davidson is a shining example of JCPS at its best. Chairwoman Porter, at this time, I recommend the consent calendar for the board's consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Hargens. Items on the consent calendar, Ms. Haddad.
Item S, please.
Okay, other items, Ms. Duncan.
Item A, and I was going to bring down R, but I think we've recognized Dirk, but I just wanted to say that he had more letters of recommendation than anybody I've seen since I've been on the board, and deserved every one of them.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Westland.
Item K.
Mr. Jones.
Item P is in Peter 2.
Other items? Okay, starting with item A, personnel items, Ms. Duncan.
This is very simple. I was looking for monitors for the buses, and I didn't know whether they would appear here or whether those would be contracted some other way, but Dr. Hargens, do you know have we addressed the hiring of monitors for some of our buses, and where does that show up? Because I didn't see that.
I will let Dr. Razor give the specifics, but yes.
Additional monitors will show up on the organizational charts, and those will come, but we are in the process of hiring monitors as well as having the extra supports that we put into place at the end of last school year still available to begin this school year.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, the next item to be pulled down is item K, Ms. Westland. That is the approval of professional services contracts of $5,000 or more. Ms. Westland.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the contracts, maybe get brief explanations. I'm not opposed to them, but I think it's good to raise these two in particular. Ms. Harden, it's number 3, the Jefferson County Sheriff. Could you just explain, I see it's $320,000 for school resource officers at some schools. This is not a cost we used to incur, is that correct?
That's right. Last year was the first year we incurred this. Previously, the Sheriff's Office provided this at no cost, but due to their budget constraints, they passed along part of the expense to us.
And isn't there another contract with the Jefferson County Police Department for school resource officers as well?
Yes, we do have that additional cost also, and last year that cost also went up. Originally, I believe we were paying around $150,000, and it went up to around $300,000 also.
That itself was $300,000, and the
Yes.
sheriff is $300,000. I just want to point out that those kinds of costs are getting passed on to us. That's $600,000 a year that we're now paying. So just didn't want that to go unnoticed. I think it's important to note that we continue to take on more expenses that others were helping with. The other one is number 6, and that's the hang on, if I get to the top, Edgenuity. The Edgenuity contract, Karen Branham. I think it might be helpful just to explain what that is. I saw that it's a $1.9 million contract, yearly. I know it's less than that, but just tell us a little bit about what that's about, okay?
Yes. Ms. Westland, this contract is really to support our new vision for what we're calling transition centers. We know that we have a large population of students in Jefferson County that are transient. They may move from one program to another or from one school to another. And as they do that, we want to make sure that they have uninterrupted services and that we're providing a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all students. And so Ingenuity is a contract that we are asking for the board's approval to support students with a common digital learning platform. And so this contract is going to be hopefully approved by the board tonight. And if there's anything else we can offer, we will.
So it will be available for students at a number of schools, is that right?
Yes. So all middle and high schools, as well as our special schools, will be able to utilize Ingenuity. So it really will not matter if a student moves from one high school to another, or from a special school to a high school or to a middle school. They'll have this common digital learning platform that can ensure uninterrupted services and curriculum opportunities for students.
It's a transition type of setup so that they
Yes.
could get then back in the classroom, correct?
Yes,
Right.
that is correct.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Ms. Duncan, did you have something?
On K, yes.
Karen? I'm back.
Oh, that's okay. It's all right. It's about the K contract that dealt with the
Oh,
SROs.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm
sorry. That's all right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Ms. Duncan. If you said K, I apologize.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say it, but I had a question on it when she brought that up. When we assume the funding for these positions, does that have anything to do with the status of insurance on these people?
No.
Okay.
The answer is no.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to P2, which is the acceptance of funding from the Jefferson County Public Education Foundation. Mr. Jones.
I'd like to recuse myself from this vote, so if you can just pull it separately.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, at this time is S, revision of board policies for first reading. Ms. Haddad.
Yeah, I would like to, these are cleanup policies, and I would like to ask that we waive the first reading and pass it on to make it the final reading so the schools can go on and activate the policies, if there's no objection.
Okay, any objections to that? Okay. So at this time, I will accept a motion for the consent calendar minus P2. Is there a motion? Mr. Jones, a second. Ms. Haddad, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. And now for the consent calendar item, acceptance of funding from the Jefferson County Public Education Foundation. A motion, Ms. Haddad, a second for that. Ms. Duncan, all those in favor? All board members except Mr. Jones, and Mr. Jones abstains from the vote. Thank you. Any questions?
Do we have to vote on that separately? S, did we have to vote on the waiver, Rosemary, or is it okay?
I'm assuming that
Everybody agreed.
what the chairman intended there was that everyone agreed
Okay.
to the amendment of the motion.
Okay, thank you.
That's absolutely correct. Thank you so much.
Exactly what you were
Just like we know the first day of school. We're all in the same
Thank
lane,
you.
so thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, moving on to the action items. The first action item is the selection of the JCPS School of Innovation Design. Dr. Harkins.
Thank you, Chair Porter. Dr. Dossett is right here. And Mr. Lowe. And actually, what I'll begin by saying is, this has been a really exciting time for the Jefferson County Public School System. So to be selected as a district of innovation, as a district, but to actually have this community engaged in how to be innovative in terms of reaching students and reaching all students. So to hear parts of this community in different areas talking about what's good for student and what's good for JCPS, I want to personally extend my gratitude to everyone that was involved in the process. The people that submitted the proposals, but also the staff members who were involved in the process, and there were lots of people involved. So we went from a large pool of letters, 82 letters, to 49 applications that then became 12 semifinalists and then became 4 finalists. So along that journey from those 82 letters of intent, there was lots of thought and there was lots of deliberation and intentionality about how to improve JCPS. And we had experts in the community from higher ed, teachers, JCTA, community members, cabinet members who all participated in going from that large number to the 4 finalists. So I want to applaud the effort and I want to applaud the results because they, we should all be very proud of the 4 finalists. And I will turn it over to Mr. Lowe, who's going to begin the discussion of the recommendation.
Okay, so earlier this evening at a work session, we walked through the 4 finalists and had a discussion about the various components of that and the thought process that went into that. And as a result, we have a recommendation to bring to the board that encompasses all 4 of the proposals. So the motion, or the possible motion, would be to for the Catalpa School to approve the concept with an expected opening date of August 2015 at an existing JCPS school. For the Louisville Reach Academy to approve the concept with an expected opening date of August 2015 at an existing JCPS school. And for all of the above proposed, or those 2 proposals, JCPS staff will identify the school whose facilities, school leadership, and staff make it the most appropriate site for implementation. We're also that these proposals may be phased in over a number of years depending on enrollment projections and capacity, so we're going to take into account specific contingencies depending on what school site gets identified, and that we will bring back to the board on September 9th for consideration specific sites and more detailed implementation and budget information. With regard to the Museum Magnet School, JCPS staff will work with the Louisville Metro government and participating cultural partner organizations to develop a financing plan for the acquisition, rehabilitation, and maintenance of possible buildings in the vicinity of Museum Row. And that administration will bring that plan to the board for consideration along with recommendations about the expected date for implementation. With regard to the Next Generation Community School, the Phoenix School of Discovery and Liberty High School, existing special schools within JCPS, will analyze the components of that proposal and incorporate those that are determined to address the needs of the students they serve. The schools will bring forward implementation timelines and waiver requests to the board at the September 9th board meeting. And also just to identify specifically that regular updates to the board will be brought forward by the superintendent.
That's the recommendation.
Questions? Mr. Hadaway?
What do the authors of these ideas, where do they go from here if this is approved? Are they passing the baton, and are they involved in the consultation? For instance, I know the Next Generation Community School, were they not people from Detroit, Michigan? And will they be involved in helping analyze the components of that and pointing to the ones they feel will move student achievement along quicker than others?
Excuse me, Mr. Attaway. I believe that the authors of the 4 proposals that they will be involved with our staff on the implementation and the planning of each of these. we think that their energy is something that we should feed upon, and as we move forward. And I think that they're stakeholders and very important stakeholders in terms of what we bring back to you on September 9th.
At the same time, we made clear to all the participants that this becomes a Jefferson County public school, and therefore it's, within that structure. So at the end of the day, appropriate people within our system and structure have determinative power of what's going to be happening in those schools.
And what's the underlying message here in pushing all 4 finalists through when criticism might come in? If we're going to funnel money toward an innovative concept, that concept could work more if it's just one. What is the underlying message of pushing all 4 through?
Well, I think that the overarching message is one size does not fit all, that we have lots of students and choices within the Jefferson County Public School System, and different systems and structures benefit different students. We have lots of talented employees who can make these concepts work. So when you're trying to improve a school district, you don't go in small steps. Sometimes you have to take bigger steps and do things simultaneously. And then when these concepts are successful, then of course we can look at replication. So that's the reason, but the overarching thought is one size does not fit all. We need all of these schools, and we have, as we all know, which you're not satisfied, which I'm not satisfied with, many students who are not being successful. And we have to move to do something about that, and I think this is a great step in that direction.
Ms. Duncan?
Just a question. Is there a prize for this? Did we ever say that there's a prize?
There's a saying about the thrill of victory. No, it's actually, there is no prize, except I think for all of us, the success of the students once these are, and so the vision that the presenters and the passion they had, seeing that realized, I think that is the ultimate success for them.
Well, do you think that there might be some way that we can follow up with a presentation or a plaque or something, a recognition for them?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Westland? Ms. Westland?
Okay. All right, I'll go ahead. I was really impressed with all of these proposals. I think all the people who've worked on the innovative ideas really did detailed work. I was amazed at all these proposals, and I'm sure others that didn't make this step. I think a lot of people worked very hard and brought a lot of people together to do this. These proposals indicate how much work is involved in just coming up with an idea and showing us the detail you put into, and I'm talking to the various proposals, not you guys right now, how much work goes into all of that. And I appreciate that, and it's very exciting for sure. I feel like where we are, we're a little looser than they are. They're very clear on what they want to do, how they would do it, how much they think it might cost, where it might be. You all are very detailed. Dr. Harkins, I don't think we're very detailed yet. I think this is all pretty, this is a lot to take on and figure out for our staff. I think we have staff who is at least as good as these other people, but you're going to be stretched really thin to pull all this together. So I really hope you look at capacity for bringing us more detail. I also think, and we mentioned at the work session, that we don't know anything yet about how we're going to pay for this. And we don't, and our budget is not, we have a kind of a working projected deficit for this school year, and we have to say that. And we're about to put a lot of staff time and effort into creating some new programs at minimum, new schools and maximum, and we're the accountable body for that. So we're moving forward with a whole lot of faith. And frankly, I don't know that I'd support it if it wasn't you're coming back to us with more information. I assume when you come back on the 9th about these first two schools, the Catalpa School and Reach Academy, that's when we'll approve some budget information. You're not going to spend a lot of money. I mean, we need more detail. I can't go back and tell people in the community who might ask me, how are you going to pay for this? We've had a lot of questions about the budget in the last several months. I have to answer it with an answer. I have to know a little bit more about that, and it's more than a detail. It is the thing, you know? So we've got to have more detail on this. I think it's great to move ahead to the next step, but we have to know how much it's going to cost and where the money's going to come from, and other partners that might be assisting. The other thing I'd like to know is KDE's reaction to doing 4 different things. You know, I hope they think more innovation's good, but I really do think we need to have more detail at this September 9th board meeting about how we're really going to move forward on this budget and our own staff. Really, you know, you have other things to do too. So that's my comment on this.
Mr. Brady?
I want to echo what Member Westland just kind of talked about as well, and also echo her thanks and appreciation for all the hard work that's gone into these proposals and all the staff time and innovators that have put these proposals together. I'm a little confused because we just got this updated memo, I guess, just before we started our board session here. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what it is we're doing. So when we say we're voting on this tonight, first of all, are we voting to move forward with the Catalpa School and the Reach Academy? All right, so we're moving, okay. Are we voting to move forward on Metro Museum Magnet School and Next Generation Community School?
What we're doing with the Metro Museum Magnet School is asking for time to work with the partners and work with people to look at how we can bring a financing plan to the board. So the next step would to bring a financing plan to what the location would be. The Catalpa School in Louisville, Reach Academy, would be an existing school, so they already have a location. The Museum Magnet, we feel like we need to do more work with the community partners to make sure that we have something in terms of a space that is not cost prohibitive.
Okay, so
we would be bringing back a recommendation to you.
All right, so my thing, just so I make sure that I'm clear on this and the community is clear on this, is that I'm okay approving Catalpa School and Reach Academy. I am not okay approving Metro Museum Magnet and Next Generation School. I'm okay hearing those come back to me, but the way this reads, it seems as if I'm approving all 4 of these with you coming back and giving us more detail later. And I want the detail before I approve. So I just want to make sure we're very clear on that, and that's when we do go to vote for it, that is stated clearly so we all know exactly what we're voting on.
That's accurate. And actually, the Next Generation Community School, the Phoenix School in Liberty, would actually begin to look at that and bring a plan back to the board with implementation timeline also. So you will hear back on all of these, but the Catalpa and Louisville Reach, what you'll hear from us is a location. Staff members have begun to look at locations and narrow down a location. That will give us a sense of cost, of any cost that's associated with that. The other 2 will bring back a recommendation based on what we find.
Okay, I just want to make sure when we approve, I want to hear language saying we're approving option 1 and 2, 3 and 4, we are not approving at this time, we will come back. That's exactly what I want to hear.
That's exactly right.
Ms. Haddad?
Yeah. And I agree with that. I want to thank everybody for all the energy they have put into this. I went down and heard all 12 of them. There were some others that were good too. and thank the staff for all the time they've put into it. But it is an opportunity for us to do something different, but we want to be sure that what we do is really going to make a difference for the kids. And you can be innovative in a lot of ways, but we want to be sure that we hit the right kids and make sure that we're doing the right things and that we get the right waivers so that when we go to do it, they can't, you know, the state won't tell us we can't do it. But I'm for bringing back the other two after you get more information because it's just hard to make a decision without, especially the budget. We have to be physically responsible and educationally responsible for these. So I can do the first two and then bring the information back on the other two. Thank you.
Ms. Westland, did you have something?
Just even on the, I understand Mr. Brady and Ms. Haddad separating out the first two and the second two, but I also want to make sure we get the budget back for the first two before we spend any. We need to see the budget before we move ahead with that.
Just real quickly, I was not here for the work session, and I want to say to the community and to staff that have worked on this that for the first time in a long time, Jefferson County is talking about education at the Jefferson County Public Schools, and they're talking about it more places than in the schoolhouse, and they're talking about it at the grocery store, and they're talking about it at church, and they're talking about it at neighborhood gatherings. And what we know for sure is we cannot teach the children and do everything by ourselves. So I'm very excited that we have 4 proposals before us. I don't have the money. I wish I did. If I had that magic checkbook in the sky, we would love to see all of them go forth, but we have to be fiscally responsible. But what I'm most excited about is we know that children learn differently, and it's our obligation as a board to provide different learning opportunities, access and opportunity for all of our students. And I commend the process, but more importantly, I commend the folks that have worked on this day and night. And the first time when we narrowed it down, there were tears, but they were tears of joy for learning for our children in the Jefferson County Public Schools. And as it becomes a JCPS concept, let's not lose the people that have put their passion and the energy on the table, because if we take them away from the equation, we'll lose a lot of the passion that we must have for students to be successful. So not only am I thanking staff, I'm thanking the community and everyone that has worked really hard on this, and the tears of joy. But ultimately, it's all about our students. What is our obligation for educating all of our students, and how do we reach them? So I just wanted to say that. I did not have an opportunity to say it earlier, but this is educating our students in Jefferson County, and it's more than us. It's the community effort. So I want to thank everyone that has been involved in that. And I think Mr. Jones has a motion.
Okay, thanks. I am going to try to formulate a motion that I think respects the superintendent's recommendation, but also lets us vote up or down on a conclusion of the contest phase of this, which we've promised to the community. And I think my colleagues have already given thanks to the participants, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I move that we name as winners of the School of Innovation contest the Catawba School and the Louisville Reach Academy, and that we authorize the next phase of planning to go forward with the superintendent to come back with budget, as has been requested, but also specific waivers. My concern is that we're just going to ask existing schools to do this, and that's not innovation. That's just piling on top of busy people. So I want to see the actual change that we're asking for. But so go forward, but come to us with specifics that we can then bless so they get funded and you go to Frankfurt with it. Metro Museum Magnet School is a fantastic idea. There's no question that it's innovative. The only reason not to include it is it requires deeper work with the community, because we're not going to fund it out of this budget cycle. We're going to need to work with community partners to find the building and the dough to stand it up if we want to do that. And then Next Generation Community School, I think, is the ideas are already adopted, really, and they're gonna empower folks who are on that path in a better way. So the motion is name the two, and let's roll. Come back with whatever you need for the other two.
Mr. Hadaway.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. That gives me a little more incentive to vote. There's some commentary in there, so I would ask the chair or Mr. Jones to restate what the motion is to vote, just to make sure.
With less editorializing?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That was constructive. I move that we name the Catalpa School and the Louisville Reach Academy as the winners of the School of Innovation contest, and that we ask the superintendent to move forward with the planning and come back to the board for approval of whatever budget is needed and authorization to submit a waiver request.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So there are more tears of joy. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Moving next on, our next agenda item is the update on the magnet school review. Dr. Hargens.
Thank you, Chair Porter. As we know, we had a magnet school review. Executive Director Scott Thomas was here with a team of people. And Dr. Radowski is here, and this is actually a many-step process, but Dr. Radowski is here to talk about what we might call demagnetizing some schools in the process to move forward. So Dr. Radowski.
Thank you, Dr. Hargens. Chair Porter, board members, Dr. Hargens, I'm pleased to be here tonight to talk about an update of the Magnet School Review. As you know, the Magnet Schools of America came here during the like winter, early spring, and they looked at our 59 magnet programs, and they basically provided to you in late March 26 recommendations on how we should proceed. One of the recommendations dealt with 15 schools that were basically identified as not being, quote, like magnetic enough, and that meant that they weren't magnetic enough either because what they were doing wasn't contributing to achievement or wasn't helping with our diversity goals, and there just didn't seem to be any, quote, like energy around the magnets at those schools. So the recommendation was to, quote, put those schools on probation and basically try to get them help. So staff has met with principals of the 14 schools, and 4 of the schools have basically said that they would really like to, quote, like give up the magnet and basically just concentrate on instruction in their building and not on the idea of quote, in improving their magnet. When we had this discussion with the 4 schools, the 4 schools realized that they will lose some like resources, basically, quote, a magnet coordinator that was placed in each of their schools, which is basically an extra teacher, around $65,000 per school. And so that $65,000 could be, quote, reallocated to the schools of innovation as we move forward. The other 10 schools have said that they would like to work with the staff and work with Magnet Schools of America to basically learn about best practices with their magnet theme that are taking place at other schools around the country, and to use the standards that the Magnet Schools of America used to basically, quote, evaluate our programs. I want to remind everybody that Scott Thomas, the executive director, when he was here, he called us the Galapagos Island of magnet schools, okay, meaning that we had built up our magnet program basically in isolation with everybody else across America, and that he strongly encouraged that that we would become part of the broader magnet community so that we could learn from places that are being more successful with some of the themes that are struggling in our district. So the principals of the other 10 buildings basically have agreed to take up that challenge, and we believe over the next couple years we'll be able to strengthen those magnet schools. The other thing that is part of this board agenda is that we promised you in May sort of a timeline around the 26 magnets. And the timeline really isn't a specific timeline other than to say that we think that we can handle the recommendation in the short term or in the long term, or we think that this recommendation is good with some modifications, or that we might need to further review this with a steering committee that we will be forming in the next month. And so we have those 26 recommendations listed in an attachment. We said that we would bring this back to you in June because of the start of school and other things. We're just getting it to you today, and so we'll be proceeding with the other recommendations based on short-term, long-term modification and steering committee for further consideration. I also want to point out to you that Scott Thomas said that these recommendations, it'll take us about 5 years to basically work through these recommendations, and so that this is the start of the 5-year process. And with that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Hadaway, and then Ms. Duncan.
Thank you, Dr. Radowski. I'm very interested because that was one of my questions. I didn't know what short-term meant, long-term meant, and modification. So you're assuring that those definitions will be clear in the future.
Yeah. I'm going to say long-term means it might take the whole 4 to 5 years. Short-term, I'm hoping in the next year we can get to it, and then the modifications and what the steering committee considers is going to be somewhere between that 1 and 4 year mark.
Thank you. And then just for a matter of review, can you share the 4 magnet programs and probably maybe one reason, I don't have to have several reasons of why those schools decided to demagnetize?
Well, in one case, there was a new principal. Like, there was a principal change, and that principal really felt that that the school needed to concentrate on instructional issues and not the magnet. So it was a new person brought into a situation that needed.
What was the magnet at that school?
It was Success for All, and it was at Jacob.
Okay.
Okay. The other 3, basically, it was sort of the same kind of issue about struggling with achievement issues and a lot of work. They were on the cusp of maybe being a priority school, and they just felt like the school energy needed to be placed in more of the instructional area than it was about attracting students and things like that. Okay, and I, and we respected their decision.
And what were those magnets?
Those magnets were, and I might have to have somebody help me with the specific. I know that one was Rangeland Elementary, and that was health. McFerrin Preparatory, and Kathy, can you,
Rather,
like McFerrin?
McFerrin.
What's-
Preparatory Academy.
Yeah. Wasn't that about leadership, and
Jacob
like
was Success for All.
And what was the
Visual
other?
arts.
And like Rutherford was like visual arts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, those were the three.
Ms. Duncan and then Ms. Haddad.
with these 26 recommendations, I noticed even the recommendations weren't, I didn't feel like they were exactly stated the way that we had them earlier, especially around the Olmsted schools. So I think we need some clarification and how that's going to be handled, because I remember the recommendation came from them that they would become traditional schools and not be the magnet schools or have the magnet programs that they have right now, which draw from kids from all over the county, or at least that's the plan for that. But what happened to that? Because I didn't see that in the 26 that I read through.
There are, the Olmsted schools, it was the boy-girl concept was still, was what we met them about. We still have to have the larger discussion around the traditional schools and what the Magnet Schools of America call the mirror magnets, okay? And that's a larger discussion, because right now, our traditional schools, right now, anybody in the traditional school has a, quote, pipeline to male high school. And we will have to have a discussion about, maybe bounding, male high school if we go with the discussion at Magnet Schools of America. That's one of those recommendations that's either a long-term discussion or it's one of those recommendations about modification, and it's a much larger conversation than the initial one that we had with the principal. So we asked the Olmsteds to stay firm with their magnet right now while this larger conversation goes on.
The timeline that's attached is really a really high-level overview of things that need to happen and be discussed. The only thing that we're asking for approval is to demagnetize those 4 schools. So there's nothing in the timeline that you're approving that wouldn't be brought back to you.
Yeah.
So there's nothing happening to the Olmsteds. That's for a discussion for another time.
Well, I just need clarification about when we say demagnetize them. Please make clear what that means.
Well, right now, what it means for the 4 schools is they get resources and they get a place in the choices book about having a program. And as part of our application process, there's a lot of, like application work that, drop-down screens that says if you're interested in, let's say, the Rutherford Visual Arts, okay? This past year, a parent could go to our application system, basically put in the appropriate thing about wanting to go to Rutherford, and then our system would take the application that way. What these schools have said is that they don't want to be part of that system anymore. They just want to be part of the cluster exchange program within their cluster, and they are willing to give up their magnet coordinator for that. Okay, that's what they're asking, or that's what they're...
Yes,
yeah.
that is correct. The 26 recommendations that we're looking at are based on the 5 pillars of the Magnet Schools of America. The specific schools that you're talking about, Ms. Duncan, are very specific recommendations for every school, and that would become part of the work, part of the steering committee work to look at that. So there's 2 separate work documents, but all of it, as Dr. Radowski said, would be brought back to you for recommendations.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
And we really wanted to do this recommendation tonight because we are preparing, even though we're starting school on Wednesday, we are we're already thinking about 2015-16 in terms of our application process, and we're putting together the choices book, and we're putting together the application system for 15-16 so that when we have the showcase of schools in October, we're basically ready to go. So we wanted to get your approval about these 4 schools.
Okay, Ms. Haddad.
I have to ask this question because I'm still getting phone calls about manual. No, they're not going to change.
No.
Okay.
There's
I mean, I
there's
can
no
tell them now that
recommendation.
we're not going to.
There is no recommendation.
Okay, that we're not going to take them out. Okay, that's good.
Well, there's no recommendation
There's
about
no
anything
recommendation.
other than the 4
Yeah, I know
schools,
that.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the 4
So
schools.
that's not, that's an
That's it.
inaccurate
That's it.
statement,
Just
is
the
my
4
understanding.
schools.
Oh, okay.
And that's with principal coming forth saying.
Yeah.
This is the 4
okay.
schools
Okay.
with, like, we went to look at these 14 schools
Okay.
at first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Then on 14, I noticed that it said, and I know we're not voting on that part of it tonight, transportation to the Brown School. Is that going to have a discussion about that? Because that's, are you going to look at that whole school, or are you just going to look at that? Because that's part of their curriculum, that they don't have transportation because they want to be downtown.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah.
It seems like that we're having multiple conversations.
Yeah.
And what's before us tonight is the discontinuation of magnet status for Jacob, McFerrin, Rangeland, and Rutherford. Is that right?
That's
Correct.
right.
Even though we have a document before us that's talking
Right.
about some other items, the motion that will come before the board are those 4 schools that I just stated. Am I correct?
That's
We
it.
have multiple questions about some other things, which I think we should take away from this table and get directly with Dr. Radowski and Ms. McGinnis, and there will be other information coming back to the board. But the motion, I believe, that you're asking us to approve tonight is a discontinuation of the magnet status for 4 schools: Jacob, McFerrin, Rangeland, and Rutherford. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but what Ms. Haddad is saying is we're all getting questions and phone calls, but we will direct those directly to you.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's fine.
For you to respond to, because we are getting questions, but what's before us tonight are those 4 schools, if I'm correct. Now, any other conversation about those 4 schools?
No, and I wouldn't have asked anything if it hadn't been attached to the agenda, because I
understand.
assume that
The-
when something's attached to the agenda, you can ask a question
Well,
about it.
Well, the reason why we attached this timeline to the agenda is that we promised you in May this timeline on these 26 recommendations, and we actually promised it to you, I believe, at the end of June board meeting, and we just didn't get there, and so we felt that we needed to do that tonight.
So are we not then, we're not approving the attached document? I mean, that's really what this is, says on here. The attached document categorizes the status of the 26 recommendations. Are we not approving that? That's on this agenda.
The attached
We're
document.
not approving the attached document.
The attached document is for your information as to how we're going to approach the 26.
Okay. Well,
Um,
it's confusing when it's
recommendations.
attached to the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
No,
that's fine. No.
I apologize for.
No, I wouldn't, no, but it's on here, that's part of it, so.
Yes.
No, you don't have to apologize for that, Bob. You were right, it was on there, so I was asking the question because it was on there. Thank you.
Ms. Duncan?
Just one more question. On Rutherford, for instance, because it's not going to be a magnet anymore, that does not mean that they can't continue their theme.
Oh, no, they can
They will
continue their
continue.
thing. Yes, they can.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's still a school decision around the theme. They just aren't going to get the magnet resource person.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a comment because there is confusion when we have an attachment. So if we're not going to discuss the attachment, then maybe we should receive that in another venue because it has created some conversation. And I'm just trying to direct traffic. according to what it says, the recommended motion. I understand what you're saying, Ms. Haddad, but we all have questions, and I just tried to get us back to what the recommended motion was before the board this evening. And I would like to ask, you talked about getting rid of magnet coordinators, so does that mean that in the 10 other buildings that the magnet coordinators will stay in place?
Yeah.
Okay. So, are there other questions? Mr. Jones?
Just have a question. When will the actual magnet recommendations come back to the board?
That's why, that's why we put the attachment there to try to give you an idea that there's some that we think that we can do in the short term, and so probably later this year, after a steering committee's formed, we start having discussion. There'll be some that will be coming back maybe 2 years from now, and we think some might take 3 or 4 years before we bring them back.
Okay, so I'm with Ms. Haddad. The agenda says the steering committee, once finalized, will present a multi-year plan to present the recommendations to the Board of Ed later this fall. Okay. I think we can go ahead and vote on the 4 tonight, but I don't think this is acceptable to have an issue of this importance that has been introduced to the community, what is it, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, come back in a confusing format like this, where, my summary would be hard decisions are kicked to a steering committee that doesn't exist, well, and that we don't know anything about, and at some uncertain point it'll come back to us. I think we need to have a timeline and an actual plan for when we are going to get votes together, up or down, on what we're doing with the magnets. We had a very powerful critique of the magnet program come in here, and we can't just sit here and let it linger out there.
Okay. Other comments? Okay, is there a motion to vote to approve the discontinuation of the magnet status for Jacob, McFerrin, Rangeland, and Rutherford Elementary School for the 2015-16 school year? Ms. Haddad, second. Mr. Jones, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Before we move on to our next agenda item, Dr. Harkins, I want to point out that the board is requesting more information about the magnet report, more than the handout that we received this evening, whether that's in the form of a work session, because we could go on talking about the various recommendations for some times, and that's not what we were asked to do, but it warrants conversation. So please bring something back to the board.
Absolutely. We'll bring a timeline, a very specific timeline to the board.
Okay. The next item is the report on the impact of telecommunications devices, policy waivers, and approval of waivers for the 2014-15 school year. Dr. Harkins.
Last year, you approved a waiver to allow students in some of our schools to use iPhones and telecommunications devices, which is against the policy. And what we promised you is that we would do a program evaluation to actually look at the impact of using those devices. And you know that I'm a fan of data-informed decision-making, and that data should inform the decision. But in this particular case, they're going to explain to you what the data says, and the recommendation's going to say to continue moving forward. And the rationale behind that is that you cannot move backward out of the 21st century because everything we had hoped for didn't get accomplished. So they're going to talk more specifically about that. And I want to thank Mr. Brady for his suggestion about lessons learned, and that is right at your seat, Mr. Brady. And Marco Munoz, Dr. Munoz, provided that for you, so that it was very specific about the lessons learned from the program evaluation. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Branham. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harkins. Good evening, Chair Porter, members of the board. We're happy to be here tonight to share our baseline data and an update on the schools who participated in the telecommunications waiver for the 2013-14 school year. Joining me tonight are Charis Lattimore, Director of Computer Education Support, Dr. Marco Munoz with Data Management and Research, Amy Dennis, Assistant Superintendent for Achievement Area 2, and Brad Weston, Principal at Fairdale High School.
Only 9 months ago, we presented some introductory information about the telecommunications waiver pilot and opened with a statement that still holds today. The reason that we presented as educators was to make sure that students are able to learn all that they can with the current tools that are available. This graphic reminds us that there are a lot of tools available for use. The waiver made it okay for students to also use their cell phones to access information. Cell phones are a large part of everyday life, and that will continue to be true in the classroom. Up until last October, the cell phone, which is a great telecommunications tool that can be used instructionally, was banned. In this status update, we will share what has been done to date and what we are planning to do with bringing another technological tool into the fold of being another option for our students' learning. We'll start with the history of the project to refresh our memories on what was presented last November. We'll share current findings based on the same measurement tools that were used consistently in the fall and spring. Finally, we'll share future action plans and recommendations. If you will recall, we started with 8 schools. And then we added 3 more in the spring. In the fall and spring, we used the eWalk walkthrough instrument tool to collect data using the 3 to 5 minute model based on the work by William K. Polston. We also used a survey instrument tool for students and teachers developed by JCPS Data Management. When we presented to you last November, some of our recommendations for this pilot included guided exposure for teachers and students, establishing expectations, rituals, and routines for classroom use, and broader implementation across the participating schools. This slide shows the aggregate stats from the site visits for fall and for spring. This slide shows the teacher's use of technology is predominantly on the computer. A change for the upcoming year will be to include a measurable action plan that will help to increase these numbers for overall usage. This slide shows the students' use of technology in the classroom. The data indicates some students use the technology infrequently. And even though this data may not seem encouraging, we are excited to continue our work this year because research indicates that over 90% of high school students have cell phones, and that's according to Project Tomorrow 2010. You all received a copy of the program evaluation from Dr. Munoz. The report indicated that 4% of the teachers at pilot schools participated in district-provided PD. However, it is important to note that additional professional development did occur in some of the pilot schools at varying levels. We also noted a decrease in teacher support from the fall to the spring. However, it is important to note that with many new initiatives, an implementation dip may occur. A highlight of the program evaluation indicated that most students believe cell phones support student learning. In addition, the report showed a decrease in referrals due to cell phone infractions. Clearly, the data indicated that teacher and student perceptions were different, but we hope to close the teacher-student gap in perception with some intentional and continued work on this project. During the summer, I was able to meet with each and every principal who participated in the pilot. During our conversations, there was a recommitment to staff PD at the beginning of the 2014-15 school year, as well as planned PD throughout the school year. Principals also suggested that a smaller subset of teachers might participate in the pilot rather than targeting the entire faculty. As the Director of Computer Education Support, I have already assigned one of my staff members to serve as the lead on this project so that we ensure each pilot school is supported throughout the project.
In addition, we'd like to recommend that for any future waivers that come before the board, we want to make sure that as those schools are considered, schools must first participate in foundational professional development provided by Computer Education Support before the waiver is approved. And finally, tonight, we're requesting from the board for an extension of the telecommunications waiver for the 9 of the schools currently participating in the pilot program for the 2014-15 school year. In addition, we're requesting an approval of the telecommunications waiver for Brown High School for the 2014-15 school year. And finally, we'll leave you with this image as a reminder that we appreciate your continued support in adding another device to our students' toolboxes that will enable them to access the information they need for continued student learning. And now we'll be happy to answer any questions for the board.
Mr. Brady, thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Brady.
And thank you for being here this evening. I really do appreciate you all following up on this. There's another component to this presentation that was given to board members, some documentation, supporting documentation for this review. And I do want to, just so the public knows and just so we can start some conversation here, a couple of things that really struck me, kind of came out at me. And one of those was, and there's actually several, but teachers' use of technology is most associated with the use of computers in the fall and in the spring, so no cell phones. And the cell phone use for instruction was rarely observed with teachers actually saying less than 1%. So that's a really telling thing to me, and I know that kind of follows into the professional development that we had talked about and that you had just mentioned. And I'm curious that, you know, we're talking about, and I like the recommendation to provide, to require professional development before granting a waiver. I think that's something that, you know, is very important. Do we have PLCs that are helping the schools that have that waiver? Are those involved? Is there a technology PLC that's telling folks what's working, what's not working, what applications to use, what not to use? And also, and to piggyback, and I'm not finished on this, but to piggyback on another question, you're requesting Brown High School to be granted a waiver. Have they done a professional development?
I can't completely address that question, so I'm going to defer to my colleague, Dr. Wheat. She's been working specifically with the Brown High School. Dr. Wheat?
They have been actually waiting to submit this waiver since last spring.
Okay.
Their site-based decision-making council signed off on a waiver, and they were told to wait till this report came in the fall. They submitted again in anticipation of that, and they have done initial professional development on the technology training. They want to continue with more of that. It's a perfect fit for Brown because they do promote independent learning and individualization of student programming, so we're hopeful that you will pass that for them too.
As long as they've done the training, I'm
Yes.
fine with that.
Initially, we're continuing to follow up. I don't think they believe, and we do too, that the training is ongoing as well.
As
But
a
they have
technology
done-
trainer, it's never finished. Just like any
Correct.
other teaching, it's never finished.
Correct.
So, some of these other stats that I got from the report, just really, really kind of startling to me about how little our teachers are actually implementing this in the schools. So that's something that's just really, I want us to continue to address that and to move forward. One of the things that, and Superintendent and I had discussed prior to our meeting this evening, what I had initially asked for was what I refer to as the post-implementation review, or PIR. And this is something that's done within a technology field, and this is a review, I guess, to a degree of our waivers, and it gives us some really interesting information about who's adopting, who's not adopting, what students' views are, what the teachers' views are, and I know there's definitely a gap between the teachers and the students' views. But this isn't exactly a post-implementation review, and one of the things that we talked about was the lessons learned that I talked to Dr. Hargens about. And I appreciate getting this, though it's a little late. I haven't really had a chance to go through this to really ask any intelligent questions about this, because I just got this prior to sitting down for this board meeting. Actually, while I was sitting down for the board meeting. So, I think that we need to do this a little bit better, and we need to take a look at that. I still don't know what went wrong, what went right. I don't know if there's, as I said, if there are PLCs in our schools that are technology PLCs that are helping our teachers work together to find out what to use and what not to use. How did a tool impact achievement? How did, this waiver impact achievement? I know that's a very nebulistic thing, but it's something that's the reason we're granting the waivers, is so we can improve student outcomes and improve achievement. What should we have done differently? Were our goals achieved? What were the goals? I'm just kind of skipping over some of these things. Were there a cost associated with this? With doing the professional development, what type of costs were associated with that? What can we look forward to or expect once we grant more waivers or if we go district-wide? I'm still not comfortable, and there was also network access and bandwidth issues. Do we have adequate coverage through our schools? I'm still not comfortable lifting this as a district, because I still feel that this is a pilot, and I also understand that we don't have enough information to kind of grow a sample. That being said, we have a huge need for our students to really embrace this technology and use it in the classroom. But if only 1% of our, and I know it's observed, but only if 1% of the teachers is actually utilizing this, then what are we doing? So that's something that I really want us to address moving forward. And I'm fine with granting a waiver to Brown because they've done the PD. And that's the only reason why I'm okay with that. But I'm still hesitant on lifting this for everyone. And I think it's something that eventually we need to do as a district, but we need to really have some really good set plans and some templates for others to follow, so not everyone has to reinvent the wheel and no one's spinning their wheels and we're not burning valuable classroom time.
Right. And Mr. Brady, just to clarify a couple points. Number one, I think one of the biggest things that we've learned from this waiver is that hindsight's always 20/20. If we could go back and do it over from the start, I think the first thing we would do is establish what are the foundational pieces of professional development that schools need before they launch and implement a pilot such as this. And so I think under the tremendous leadership of Shara Lattimore and her shop, we can actually frame and outline what those foundational professional development sessions need to be, and computer education support is definitely equipped to provide those. Secondly, I want to clarify that what we're asking from the board tonight is only that we approve and extend the waiver for these 9 schools that participated in the pilot last year. We'd like to extend that into 2014-15, and then that we add the Brown School. And I'm sorry, Ms. Dennis or Mr. Weston, did you have?
I was just going to talk about what we learned at the school level, and I think it'll address, I was trying to take notes here, but 3 of the things you mentioned. You know, one, what did we learn? I think looking back, we thought coming in that we needed to learn more about what instructional tools were out there. And we put a lot of effort into learning about different apps, different programs that were available. And what we found out was we probably should have started with management. I mean, you're throwing a powerful tool into the classroom, and I think that carries over to your question about why didn't we see more of this when we did the walkthroughs. Teachers have learned how to manage their classroom for years and years now without cell phones, so it was easier to continue that way. You know, we left it up to the discretion of the teachers, so it's easier to keep managing your classroom by saying, hey, in my classroom we're going to continue with the band. So, you know, you would go in those classrooms and not see the cell phones. The other thing I made a note on, I don't think it's unusual. Matter of fact, I think it's typical for children to adjust and adapt before adults. And you know, I think that was part of it also. But and going back and talking about PD schools would need, I think it would be that management tool, and it's out there, something as simple as like a red, yellow, green protocol, to where there's a verbal cue, there's a visual cue, and it looks the same in every classroom, and kids know what the expectations are in every classroom, whether we're not going to have cell phones in sight this period, or whether it's going to be a controlled use, controlled by the teacher with commands like screens down that we'll use school-wide, or whether it's going to be green and we can use these tools for research or however we need to research to help improve instruction and our learning in that classroom setting. So what we kind of learned is management PD before instructional tool PD.
And those are great things. I don't see any of that in here, at least me looking over this quite quickly. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those things need to be written down, because you're already paving the way. That's what a pilot's supposed to be. You're paving the way for others. They need his roadmap. You know, they need Wagner's roadmap. I see Wagner out here. So, you know, we need other folks to be able to learn from you guys, and we need those lessons learned written down. And with all due respect, you know, this is great, but specific lessons learned. And that's what I was asking for initially, and that's that's several of the concerns I had when we granted this initial waiver. And I'm going to be quiet now because I'm hogging all my colleagues' time.
As Ms. Branham said also, you know, hindsight is 20/20 for us. And in the field of education, one of the things, and the report actually said that it was a participatory action research, actually, which was another thing that was kind of like a hindsight for us. So in participatory action research, you have teachers as educators learning as they're going along in implementing something new, this was exactly that. It's also a collaborative effort. So one of the things that we're looking at this year is also using SITs when we do our reflective practices, so that teachers can reflect on what worked and what did not work for them. So those are some of the things that we're going to also include this year. The professional development that we provided through computer education was also all research-based. So with all the professional development that we delivered, we did a book study the entire year. And so those are some of the things that we wanted to encourage schools to take advantage of to a greater degree. So when I met with the principals this year and this past summer and explained that to them, I mean, there was total recommitment on taking advantage of those types of opportunities.
The only other thing I'd like to add, and I think you addressed this, Mr. Brady, was the walkthroughs that were conducted in all of these schools were unannounced. Teachers never knew when we were coming in to do the walkthroughs, and they were truly a snapshot of what was occurring in the classroom during those 3 to 5 minutes. And so the data speaks for itself. During those 3 to 5 minutes when we were in the classrooms doing walkthroughs, we saw what we saw. And during those 3 to 5 minute snapshots, you know, we did not see a lot of technology being utilized, specifically cell phones. But I think it's important that we frame that and understand that these were just little 3 to 5 minute snapshots of what was occurring. We weren't in the classroom for an entire lesson. Teachers didn't know when we were coming in, so there was no opportunity for teachers to prepare in advance or know what we were looking for or when we were coming in classrooms. So.
And you also asked a question about the PLCs, and the PLCs are usually developed with, you know, like-minded instructors focusing on something. And we do have technology PLCs for like our computer lab teachers and some other technology things that we're doing in the district. That was another thing that we wanted to include for this upcoming year, because with participatory action research, you go back and you look to see what works and what did not, and how can we improve our practice. So that is something that came out of it that was very positive. And so now we know that these are some of the other things that we want to address, and then we'll have a real good opportunity to implement that for this upcoming year.
Ms. Duncan, and let me say that we asked for a report. We got the report. The report does not give us perhaps the information that we thought it was going to give, but we asked for it. So based on the report, we have to decide whether we stay where we are, go forward, or regress back. And I think that we want to talk about that. But based on the data that we've received, you've given us a very clear explanation as to how it was gathered. We have the report. We have the information. Thank you for gathering the information for us. It's what we asked for. But now we have to make some determinations. I'm going to call on Ms. Duncan, and if there are no other comments, then we'll call for the vote, because you've given us a very clear explanation as to what has happened, how you gathered the information. We have the numbers, whether we, you know, it's not solid numbers, but it's what we asked for. So, Ms. Duncan.
Yes, and I really appreciate the spirit that all of this has been undertaken with. But you know, we were disappointed. I think we haven't talked, but I mean, I was disappointed in the numbers. But I never ever thought that this is a one-year deal. You can't pilot this in 1 year and then make an assumption about the impact that it has on student achievement, because we don't have the test results back yet. So I don't think we can say it's a one-year deal. It needs to be at least a 2-year deal where we can then evaluate its impact on student achievement, because that's what we're after in all of this. What surprised me was that I was under the impression that the teachers really wanted to try this as a tool and use it, and then when you see in the springtime that moving away from it. But of course, you also have to remember in the springtime, they're getting ready for testing, and their emphasis sometimes is not the same in the spring as it is in the fall. So I think, that's really not totally surprising. I don't want this to feel like we're imposing, because I don't want it to feel like we're digging in and saying, no, you will do this. I want this to be something that, and I think the only way we can reach that is if our teachers have an opportunity to have professional development and learn its benefits and learn how this will benefit them, make their jobs more effective, or make them more effective in performing their jobs. So I don't want this to feel like, okay, well, we didn't do too well this year, but so now everybody has to do this and do that. I don't think that's the route we want to go. There are teachers who are wanting to do this, and I think the limiting the number of teachers who are taking part in this is a great idea, and then we can evaluate this later on. Evaluate based on those teachers and the results that they get with their students, not school-wide, but how we see the results and the impact it has on their students. So I'm saying the waiver needs to be more than just 1 year anyway.
Okay, one other comment on the data that was collected for this. One of the things that we talked about extensively before we approved any waiver was accessibility for all students. So in looking at the data, how do we know that this was accessible for all students if they chose to use it? How would we know that based on the report? And I guess I'll direct that to you, Dr. Nunez.
Yes, we looked at that data, and actually close to 100% of the kids and of the teachers had a cell phone. Now, the adults didn't use it as frequently as the young people, but the national data actually say that over 80% of the high school kids have a cell phone. Well, in our district, our own data, based on the respondents, on the sample of respondents, it was over 95%.
Okay. Because that was something that we talked about extensively. If it was not there, that the schools would make it available so that access and opportunity was there for every student. So what I'm hearing you say is 95% it was there for students when you gathered the data.
Yes,
correct?
And that's why, Ms. Porter, that's why the people are talking about a new concept that is called the new digital divide, which is not the traditional digital divide, which was with kids with more, with more resources versus people with fewer resources. Now the new digital divide is actually between the adults or the generation, baby boomers and the millennials and Generation X. So there's now it's more like a generational kind of issue.
So are you saying you're never too old to be smart? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other discussion? I'd like to read the motion because it has multiple parts, and I'm reading it directly from the report. And it's recommending that the Board of Education receive a report and updates on the schools participating in the telecommunications device policy waiver pilot program and approve an extension of the telecommunications device policy waivers for Moore, Ballard, DuPont Manual, Fairdale, Iroquois, Pleasure Ridge Park, Seneca Valley, and Wagner High School for schools for 2014-15, and the approval of one additional waiver for Brown High School 2014-15 school year. Is there a motion? Mr. Jones, second. Ms. Westland, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, discussion item for the 2014-15 discussion agenda planning calendar. Any items for the discussion agenda planning calendar? Hearing none, is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I'd like to ask that the superintendent put the magnet schools on the calendar sometime in the fall.
Okay.
And come back with an actual report.
Anything else? Ms. Westland?
Yes, I was looking at the planning calendar today, and I know there'll be some other things added, I'm sure. One, I know we need to get on there is the arts report at some point. It's not super urgent, but it'd be great for me if it would be in the fall at some point. And I noticed that on December 15th is the meeting set for the update on the joint education commitment, which would be kind of the first year of that. And I'd like to request that we see if the mayor would come and be with us on that particular report, and if we have to approve that annually. I don't know how that's going to work out. But also there are a couple of significant partnerships, as I recall. I know Kentuckiana Works there's a lot of work, and we approve a lot of contracts with Kentuckiana Works. And then I know we have a big partnership on preschool. It would be great to have Mike Gritton and others here to talk a little bit about those significant partnerships we have with the city, and at least this one time it'd be great to see the mayor here at a board meeting.
Other items? Hearing none, is there a motion to receive the planning calendar? Mr. Brady, second. Ms. Haddad, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the board reports and requests. Board reports, Ms. Duncan.
I've got 4 requests, and they all are around data. 2 are simple. I'm curious about our kindergarten enrollment and right now, as of now, and the enrollments in I think we know Frost, but Phoenix School and Wagner, the 7th and 8th grade in Wagner and the 7th and 8th grade in Valley. Those are two requests. Then another request I have on data is, I know we're supposed to be tracking our college and career readiness rate for our GED students. And I don't think I've seen that. I would like to see how they're doing in terms of this emphasis on college and career readiness. And, you know, the other thing I would like to request, 55,000 Degrees is an initiative that uses Jefferson County's data, uses JCPS data to track our progress toward preparing kids for post-secondary study or education training. And our trajectory is reviewed to see if we are reaching goals. And I would also like to, you know, I think it's very important that 55,000 Degrees is also aligned with the jobs that we have coming into the community. So I would like to see the data that has been gathered on the jobs that have been created and what areas those jobs are in, so that we can align or make sure our programs are aligned with the needs of the community and the jobs that are being created and brought in. So I would like if we can get that information. I think we need to keep checking that alignment and the number of jobs that have been created and the area that are the areas that they're being created in. And probably GLI has that information.
Any other reports and requests? Okay, we do have 2 speakers on non-agenda items this evening, and I will read the directions for the speakers, and then we will call them up. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. Our first speaker this evening is Mr. James White. Mr. White, Mr. James White. Welcome, Mr. White. You may either stand at the podium or have a seat at the table, wherever you're more comfortable. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. My name is James White, and I was invited to a business meeting by Mr. Carl Ladford and Mr. Mike Mulhern to address contractors doing work for JCPS. And in this meeting, it was brought to attention that the majority of the contractors that do work for JCPS, it was asked why wasn't these contractors using more minority contractors. And the majority contractors said that it's because the JCPS doesn't make them. Well, you have a 25% MBE participation goal, and you have for MBEs, and you have a 10% WBE goal. And it's not being met. It's being met more so on the WBEs, which is women-owned businesses, than minority businesses. I took some notes while we were there at the meeting, and last year there was $54 million being spent on construction projects in JCPS. Minority contractors got $1 million, $1,266,438 out of $54 million. WBE contractors got $12,448,623. Mr. Mulhern says that they JCPS operates on good faith. Well, on good faith, we had several contractors. One contractor had 3 projects with JCPS totaling $7,577,000 with no participation, MBE or WBE participation. We've had several. One contractor had a contract for $18 million, $18,696,000, $75,000 of that went to an MBE contractor, and $6 million of it went to a WBE contractor. I do a lot of work for Louisville Metro Housing. They have a procedure in place that if you don't meet their goals, your bid is considered non-responsive and it's thrown in the garbage can. And that's the only way that these contractors, these general contractors, understand it. As long as you got a good faith effort, and if y'all can check with Mr. Mulhern and Mr. Ledford, they can get you the information that you need.
Thank you, Mr. White, for being here tonight.
Will y'all look into that?
We will give it to the superintendent, and then she responds back to the board. So thank you. Yes, sir. I think the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Bledsaw. Ms. Bledsaw, Mary Bledsaw, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, board. My name is Mary Bledsaw. My son is Albert Bledsaw. He is a kindergartner at Kennedy Montessori. My husband and I also have a 4-year-old. Over the summer, we had to change our daycare due to some unacceptable behavior. One of them, he was missing the bus in the morning. We chose a daycare at 801 South 28th Street. It's close to school for us and also close to home. Now, the daycare resides in Coldridge Taylor, Montessori. However, 1 block away at 917 South 28th Street, that's Kennedy's area. We're not asking for a route, we're just asking for a stop. We have spoken with our compound, Dietrich. We've emailed Ms. Porter, and she's forwarded on the transportation. Transportation offered us a new list of daycares. One of them we visited, and it wasn't a very good, it was unsatisfactory. We called our option magnet program because we are in the Montessori program, and they said that even if we wanted to switch to Coldridge Taylor at this later date, which is I'm on the PTA, I volunteer at the school, that even at this later date, we could probably not get into Coldridge Taylor this year. We're just asking, we keep getting told no, and we just like an explanation. And all this has happened within the past week. We would just very much like to keep our 2 boys together, 2 different directions, 2 different times a day, and we're just asking for a stop at 108 South 28th Street. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Dr. Harkins, would you report back to us, please, about that? I know there have been some emails that have been sent around, so if you get back with us, I'd appreciate it very much. That completes our speakers for this evening. There is a need for us to go into executive session. So at this time, it's necessary for the Board of Education to enter into an executive session. Do I have a motion that the Board of Education meet in executive session for the purpose of discussions relating to negotiation strategies pursuant to KRS 61.8101E of the Kentucky Open Meetings Act? Is there a motion, please? Mr. Jones. Second, Mr. Hadaway. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we can have the executive session in the first floor conference room. Is that first floor conference room right behind us? Thank you.